From pre-pandemic flashback to post-pandemic vision of documentary distribution hosted by the Nordisk Film Fond, Film and TV Fond, and moderated by their senior advisor, Karolina Lidin. And Karolina is actually here in the studio also. She's going to join me, or not join me, because I have, for pandemic's reasons, so to speak, have to leave the floor. So I will leave you with Karolina. Enjoy yourselves.
Good afternoon, good evening, or maybe even good morning, wherever you are. Yes, I'm Karolina Lidin from the Nordisk Film TV Fond, and I have the pleasure to be guiding you through the next 30 minutes from pre-pandemic flashback to post-pandemic visions of documentary distribution. This is actually the third session in Nordisk Film TV Fond's professional meetups, which we started in Gothenburg under the heading Audiovisual Collaboration 2021, co-organized by the Finnish Ministry of Education and Culture during their presidency of the Nordic Council of Ministers. And here at the conference, we're also launching simultaneously our report on financing and distribution of documentaries supported by the fund, written by documentary consultant Yen Do. As fate would have it, the COVID pandemic bookended the time period of the survey. So we have a pre-pandemic frozen moment in time, as it were, of Nordic documentary financing and distribution. For this session, we would like to take a couple of our key findings to the table and discuss it with what we call a brain trust of seasoned professionals to proactively how do we proactively utilize our collective knowledge and experience when facing the rapidly changing post-pandemic documentary market? How do we address issues that we face as interdependent parties rather than autonomous, separate entities? But before I open the floor, I would like to briefly introduce our brain trust, starting with double A, Axel Arne, who is commissioning editor at Swedish Pubcaster. Hi, Axel, for more than 2 decades, and now taking over the helm from the legendary Ingemar Persson. And as if that wasn't enough, Axel is actually also the president of the EBU documentary group. And following the alphabet, we have Christian Aune Falk from Up North Film in Trondheim, Norway, even outside of Trondheim. But that certainly does not stand in the way of producing documentaries for the international market for more than 20 years. Among Up North's most recent feature docs are Golden Dawn Girls, Newtopia, and I, Human. And we have Martin Dawson, who's in charge of coordination of the new Creative Europe Media Program, including adoption of the annual work programs and monitoring of results. Martin also contributes to taking forward the Media and Audiovisual Action Plan. Thanks for coming, Martin. And from Denmark, we have Signe Bürger Sørensen, 2-time Oscar nominee for Act of Killing in 2014 and Look of Silence in 2016, but I would actually say 3-time, since Signe also co-produced Strong Island, Oscar-nominated in 2018. In addition, Signe has produced or co-produced 37 other films since 1998. And last but certainly not least, U is for Ulla Simonen, director of the Finnish Levy Fund AVEC, supporting production, training, and international promotion in the field of media art, documentary, and short film. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you here, even in this digital space. So paraphrasing our session brief, we see audiences verging towards easier access and global platforms on the move. But is the money where the audience is? And how do we best nurture the documentary value chain and reach future audiences without leaving our visions and voices behind? I propose pinning down these overarching questions into 2 points, and I have asked our 2 producers to exemplify the points with what I call concrete slices of life, keeping it real, as it were, for further discussion in the group. First point concerns business models. Have our financial and distribution practices been rendered obsolete, or do they just need a post-pandemic tune-up? Does our current pre-financing model sufficiently sustain the industry or primarily serve institutions? Second point, the audience shifts. How has VOD thrown a wrench into the works of financing and distribution? And how do we respond as producers, broadcasters, and institutions? What do we have to gain, and what do we not want to lose? Signe, if I come to you first with your 40 films under your belt by now. When we were preparing this session, I asked you whether we had created a monster when we started these pre-financing and pitching was introduced as the new OM for documentary production. And what did you answer?
Well, I think that it's extremely important that in Europe that we are very much aware that we do have a model that's very valuable and that we need to take care of the public service model, and that or the public model, if you like, as opposed to the American private model. And that means we have public service television stations in most of the European countries, and we have some sort of national funded film funds and regional funds, and also the media program in the EU. And all of that comes through taxpayers' money. And that is basically a redistribution of wealth to help us have cultural policies that can make sure that we tell stories that are important in our countries and for our populations. So also from other countries, of course. But so that model in general, I think is extremely important, and very, very important not to just throw away because suddenly we have the streamers and they're global in a different way. But that doesn't mean I don't think there is room for improvement. I think we can be more efficient in how we use that model. I think maybe there are some adjustments to be made in especially the pitching setups. I think maybe we have too many pitching forums. Maybe we are asking of too many projects to be co-production projects across borders before they're maybe ready for it. And I think so. I think in that sense, there are problems that should be solved.
So that was our first point. And then for our second point, I continue to you, Christian. You were thrown headfirst into VOD when the COVID lockdown was announced in Norway, when you were literally sitting in Oslo's largest cinema for the premiere of iHuman. You have also looked closer into the realities of digital platforms in a study. So please share.
Yeah, I would be happy to share my experiences because I think they shine a light on various aspects of VOD distribution. We had our theatrical premiere in Norway all lined up with our distributor, and everything was in place. You know, we had like 700 people in the cinema sitting down waiting for the film to start when the government announced the lockdown. So our distributor did an amazing job. I still don't understand how she did it. It's Vibeke Skistad from Euphoria Film. She managed to talk to all the Norwegian online platforms, and they took iHuman and launched it immediately. And it turned out to be a great success money-wise. I would say we made as much money on the VOD launch of iHuman as we would have done with open cinemas. But we never expect this to happen again, because the reason why we got all the audience watching it is because the PR campaign was based on a theatrical release, meaning we had all press coverage. We had the most important talk shows. the reviews, we had all the media we wanted and needed for the theatrical release to back up what became the VOD release. The problem is that we would never have this media attention. We would never have these talk show appearances with the director, etc., if it wasn't for the fact that it was meant for cinema. The media doesn't seem to care about online premieres as much as they care for theatrical releases, which is something I hope we can address sometime, because it's most definitely online where we will find our audience in the future. But will we find the money? I don't know, because we at Up North, we got funding from the Norwegian Arts Council to do a great survey on the income from our films on various online platforms versus all the efforts we had to put down with resources, time and money to not only, sign the contracts and get, the film up there online, but also to try to reach the audience. And it was quite devastating results. It's what came in did not match what went out in terms of money from the production office. Because as everyone knows, it's not enough to have your film available online. The real effort lies in making people understand it's there, to reach your audience. That's where the effort is. And at least for us, it costed more than what we got in return. So it was quite pessimistic, I must say. But that doesn't mean we won't give up. It just says that something has to be done with, the payment that the producers get in return for having their film online.
Yeah. So just shortly summing up, I mean, the models, as it were, are still very fundamental in the way we work, and the triangle, as I call it, between independent productions, broadcasters, and institutions is still very, very vital. But how can we give it that post-pandemic tune-up? And to you, Christian, that even the new platforms seem to rely on the old windows in terms of promotion and the chronology that we have relied on for such a long time. Ulla, can I come to you? I mean, obviously as head of AVEC, but you also have extensive experience as a producer yourself, working both in Europe and internationally. How do you respond to these two testimonies?
Well, I'm saddened to hear that the Norwegian model did not work out later, that the media doesn't follow what has happened. I'm referring to one of my productions earlier. Future is not what it used to be. I think that we should not look back anymore to how things were. We should look back to what we want them to be. I think there's been, aside from Signe and Christian, what they said today, also earlier, Brett's story talked about the funding and the how the filmmakers, how the creators need to figure out how does this model work in order to make it happen. But I feel that this disruption in the market, what has happened, is giving the creators back their power. It was quite of a political statement, if you saw what Brett said, and I think that's very efficient in this time. But it's also difficult to say. I mean, none of us knows what will happen for real, but that gives us the possibility to think anew of everything. And I do agree on what Signe was saying, how we should take care of these models that we have, especially in Europe. I'm speaking from a very specific point of view of copyright money. We are working from the makers to the makers. The money that we hand out is the money of the makers. And I think that we need to look at that money in that way, that we have to serve the filmmakers with what we do and try to find the momentum when to go in, and so that it benefits the best way of their ability then to gain from the market whatever they need, so that they are free to make their deals in the way they need. Just before us, also Ted Hope was saying about this time of being the one where you can really hold on to the ownership of your content and distribution. And I think this goes also to the marketing, to try to find something which is not expected, but also to challenge the funders to understand that and do so as well. And I think this is something where we need to look into the mirror, all the funders working for the documentaries, that what do we expect from them? When we are talking about high-end creative documentaries, what are we talking about? And we do think, I think that we still are mostly looking about, we are working within the windows. We are thinking the windows, and we are thinking the cinema window for a feature-length documentary, and we are not looking so much for the other appearances that the creative documentary could have also in its high-end format. And that's where I'd like to encourage both us funders and the filmmakers to take a look at and try to find that new brave world where no man has yet walked before.
Then I thought I'd jump to Axel, because we can confirm in our study that public service broadcasting is the major platform where the largest audience is found by far for documentaries. But you're also in the middle of the crossfire, as it were, with the independent sector on one hand and the global streamers on the other. So what's it like in the crossfire, Axel?
Well, let me start from a little bit of a different standpoint. I mean, you have to look at our different functions, I guess. I mean, our function as public service brokers has always been to serve the national audiences. Mine happens to be in Sweden, and then we have Norwegian, Denmark, and also the rest of Europe where I function. And of course, we're all struggling with the same thing. You know, the big shift, everything is going from local to global, including the finances. We're going from single platform to multi-platform. We all need to fight for the same films. And there's an immense influx of dollars from the VOD platforms. So as a filmmaker, you should actually embrace that. I know it's very difficult, but in essence, the influx of money is good. But on the other hand, the content seems to be also flowing in, and we get loads more content that are American, and with budgets that are now supporting these films, we simply cannot compete anymore. And why should we? We should stop chasing these American films and start to rethink our own values as public service broadcasters, because we need to survive, and we still have the same function. We are here to serve our audiences, to give them what they need in terms of entertainment and in terms of fantastic films, both films that they need, both films that they didn't know they need, which is a very special public service function, I would say. So I would argue that the old models still work, but they need to be fine-tuned, and we really have to find better ways in working together, because this is what we have to do. All our types of institutions, being broadcasters, film institutes, producers alike, and I think there are a few areas where we can fine-tune and shift how we work together. Do you want me to continue, or should we let Martin in maybe?
Now it's time to let Martin in, I agree. And I've actually saved you to the end, Martin, because you have such a privileged vantage point with the European landscape and the whole... So how do you react from your particular position when you hear testimonies like the ones we hear from Sina and Christian?
Sure. Well, thank you. First of all, thank you for inviting me. Delighted to be here. Creative Europe Media is proud to have a long tradition of supporting documentaries. They are more important than ever in this ever more complex and uncertain world, documentaries are essential to help us understand what has happened and what might happen in the future. We are proud to have supported documentaries such as I Human, a high-end creative documentary, if there ever was one, I think. Well, I mean, there's so much to say. The European audiovisual industry has great talent. If you look at the Oscars over the weekend, we can be proud of what Europe is able to achieve. Also, a great documentary was nominated for the Oscars. But I would agree with all the previous speakers that we cannot rest on our laurels. We need to keep evolving and keep developing, conscious of our strengths as well. So we totally respect the role of broadcasters, national broadcasters, public, private, in terms of funding content. But as European Commission, I guess it will not come as a surprise to you that we also kindly invite you to think European. So to go beyond national borders also, not for everything, not all the time, not with your eyes closed, but do be aware of the European level, the European dimension that is also full of creativity, diversity, and potential. And that's where we come in as Creative Europe Programme. That's our unique selling point, if you like, our added value. We try and make that happen. We try and make European collaboration across borders happen, to facilitate that, both in terms of development, production, distribution. And there's a lot to do because there's a lot of competition from across the Atlantic and from Asia more and more as well. And distribution is key. 3 or 4 household names are dominating the streaming market, for example, and we are trying to develop European streamers as well.
But Martin, can I kick in? Because, I mean, our survey also showed that a good number of the films that we have funded also received really important funding from Creative Europe. So there is that sort of bridge also between the Nordic community and obviously the whole European community. But another question I have, since we at Nordisk Film TV Fond are pan-Nordic and you, Creative Europe, are pan-European, I just want to address the thoughts that are always important for us to always make sure that our funding policies stay attuned with the practical realities of the producers, which is why we put this survey into motion in the first place. Can you also recognize those thoughts in terms of how we as funds, pan-national funds, both try to promote, but at the same time also have to fine-tune?
Yeah, I think that I'm not sure I understand your specific question. You mean?
No, it's more. Maybe I should.
We support co-productions. We support distribution on a pan-European level, and that's what we do: is to help movies and documentaries travel, so that audiences across borders can enjoy them. You know, it's often forgotten, I think, that Europe produces. I'm going to speak now in general terms, including documentaries. Europe produces 1,500 films or more a year, but on average, each one of those only is distributed in 2 or 3 countries. You know, so we speak about Europe, but in reality, the audiovisual industry remains really quite national focused. You know, so we do believe that there is potential to do more to share all this wonderful content that is being produced, to share it with audiences across Europe. Absolutely, also for documentaries.
Yeah, and
That's an ongoing challenge.
Yeah. Which also brings me to something that you mentioned to me beforehand, Ulla, in terms, I think, let me quote you, that which new flexible species will make the revolution? And we're talking about who are the flexible species, and I think we all need to be flexible in times as these. But the other thing that comes to mind, what you say, Axel, in terms of the new influx of lots of money, yeah, that's what we say. But the question is, how do we make sure that that flux of money actually comes to the productions that are being produced in our region?
You have to ask Netflix about that. I don't know that. But to answer Martin and yourself in a way, I mean, nobody wants like Nordic pudding or some kind of Euro pudding documentaries. But you're part of Europe, whether you're like a federal Europe or not. You're European, so maybe you're interested in things made in Europe. And Europe has great talent, so we should definitely support European talent and national talent as well. Which brings me to, I think we should stress that we need to do things that the VODs don't. So that happens to be European content, because in the foreseeable future, there won't be lots of European productions made by, for example, Netflix. So we need to even more nurture the talent that Europe has, and which we've been very good at for the last 20 years. And this is going to be the key to our survival as well, I think. So I would argue that we really need to support even better the talents that we have and secure that they want to work with us in the future. This is extremely important. And also we need to pool our resources even more than before, maybe. I just heard the new head of France Television, Delphine Ernaud, she was speaking at an EBU event, and she said co-production is more important than ever. I've heard it said before, but it can be done a lot better, because we are not so good at being fast in response. We're not so good at being fast in distributing money to producers. We're not so good at putting in development money, and we can be a lot smarter when it comes to feedback. So we really need to fine-tune what we're doing. And I'm sitting in the EBU and in Europe, and I'm pushing several initiatives. We have the Nordic broadcasters coming together, trying to pool resources to be more accessible and more attractive as partners. We're also trying to get a big EBU initiative where we actually co-produce and co-finance 5 big films a year. You'll hear more about that later. So before you stop me, Karolina, one very crucial thing is one crucial thing, Karolina, is that the issue of rights. We have touched upon it, but we need rights. Of course, we need to show your films. This is very important for us. So the whole old windowing system needs some kind of change, because I think we're all looking at the same platform. We need to be there. We don't need to be so exclusive. We just have to be able to show your films to the audience, which is a good news. Actually, we will probably not pay substantially less, but we need to be able to show your films. Yeah, I can stop there.
Okay, thanks, Axel. Thank you for that. I really want to go full circle, because now we had the 3 of yours reactions to the producers, but let's go full circle to Sina and Christian. Any last words? Because everything's turning red around me, so that means time is up. And of course, we cannot address all issues. We cannot even solve anything. But let's make sure that we, during this session, have pinpointed some of the tune-ups needed so we can continue. But Sina, can I come to you first?
Yeah, I think Axel is very right about the issue of fast response. And also you were saying that we need the different systems to work together. And the situation is actually such for us that the kind of films we do are often not Danish, but international in some ways, either European or international, which means that we can only raise about 20 to 30% of our budgets in Denmark, and the rest has to be raised either through co-productions and pre-sales. And that means right now that we rely on going around all of Europe mainly, and we get 5,000 euro and 10,000 euro, and it takes forever. and only if we get German television, French television, or the UK, we get a larger portion that can translate into a proper budget. So because it often takes such a long time to have response, it takes a long time before we can go to the Nordic Film and TV Fond with their requirements of 70% in place. And often we cannot even apply to the broadcast, TV broadcast scheme, because we are beyond the development. So if the TV broadcast scheme changed according to and started following the Euremarche rules about that you are allowed to have started production, not have fully done production, but done a certain part, that would be a huge help. And if the broadcasters would pool resources and make some decisions faster, that would also be a great help for some of these projects, because that's the only way we can speed up a process that's otherwise very risky and very drawn out to a point where it's kind of very difficult to make a project run.
Yeah, thanks, Ina. And Christian, anything you'd like to add before we close?
I always would like to add something. Thank you, Axel, for saying all the right things. This is what we want to hear, and this is, how we would like to see things go down in the future. I would also appreciate a lot, if there were more possibilities of getting support or funding, not only from the broadcasters, but also from all the other financiers in development stage, because it's a big challenge that everyone wants to make a decision very late in the process, which means liquidity challenges for the producers. So I urge people to trust the filmmakers and to be able to join in also at the development stage, and not after a rough cut or something. That it would be of great help.
Thank you for pointing that out, Christian, and thank you for everyone. What can I say? The work has just begun. And thank you for your generous contribution, braintrust, to be continued, I hope. Those of you who subscribe to Nordisk Film and TV Fund's newsletter have today received the link to our survey. Please dig in and get back to us. We're curious to hear your thoughts. And we intend to go deeper into the issues that we have talked about today, hopefully IRL, in real life, in Nordisk Panorama in September. So stay tuned and keep the conversation going. Thank you for your input. Thank you for your time.